Okay, this meeting is being recorded.
Excellent. All right. So I'll kick it off. We have looks like 9 or 10 of us, and hopefully others will drop in over the next few minutes. We're on pretty much from now 3 minutes past 12 until 12:30 with Nigel, who is one of the coaches, counselor. Um,
Yes.
many different titles, I guess. You can tell us all when you jump on, Nigel. Nigel's been working with Uprise for quite some time, and he's a highly qualified counselor that really enjoys the coaching aspect and has been doing a lot of work with Uprise and doing a lot of the webinars also that Uprise do on a weekly basis um, for the different Uprise users and such. So basically, we had our Uprise performance results from February come through. It comes every quarter and it gives us an idea of how Conal Griffin is doing as a whole, measures all the metrics from the well-being checks and all those types of things. And what we noticed was the stress levels were a little bit higher than we'd like, and also the affected by high workload stress was a little bit higher than we'd like. So we thought it would be useful to have a presentation or webinar today with Nigel just to talk about managing stress and how we can kind of make things a little bit better going forward. And it won't be the first the only webinar. We'll have different webinars every quarter with Uprise and Nigel or other coaches too, just to take us through how we can improve on things. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Nigel and we'll get into it.
Great, Jono. Thanks, Jono. Great to be here. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Yes, managing stress. Stress is something that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis. Jono, you could probably just turn your video off there. You already have. Good work. Thank you. All right. So I always acknowledge the traditional custodians. I acknowledge the Gumbaynggirr peoples as the traditional custodians of the lands upon which I live, love, work and play. And I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging for their continuing custodianship of this country over countless generations. I also like to extend a warm welcome to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people who are present with us here today. Thanks for being here. So I am Nigel, yes. At Uprise, I'm called a psychological coach. My training is in psychotherapy and counselling. I'm a supervisor and trainer of psychotherapists and counsellors. Yes, I've been doing this for a couple of decades with a couple of other careers thrown in, careers in large businesses, Telstra, IBM, to name a couple, and also a short career as a solicitor, a lawyer. So I've got a bit of a background there, and so I am able to sort of cross between psychotherapy, counselling, psychology, and the mental health, and also the corporate space. I understand what it's like to be doing a lot of the work that you guys are doing. Have done actually consulting work myself in the past. Post your questions in the chat. When you chat, I should see the chat box get illuminated. Actually, I'm going to open the chat box up. So it's on the top of my screen and I will be able to see what you say. As a starting point, just say hi. The other thing you can do is if you know the local Aboriginal tribe or people of where you're at, whose country you're sitting on, then you can acknowledge them in the chat. But yeah, let's have a conversation. And if you don't know who your local Aboriginal country is, then you might want to think about that and find out. So we're talking about stress today. A lot of the things that I talk about, I'm very philosophically informed in my style of practice. For people who aren't familiar with psychology, psychotherapy, counselling, it tends to be very philosophically informed. At the same time, everything I talk about does have a scientific foundation and basis as well. So everything that I'm telling to you, whilst philosophically driven, is scientifically informed and validated. Okay, so stress is what we're talking about today. And, we're having this webinar because you and your colleagues have been experiencing additional stress. And what do we mean by stress? It's a feeling. Yeah, it's a feeling of emotional strain or pressure. It's interesting to think about, isn't it? Because we just talk about this thing called stress a little bit like we talk about this thing called anxiety. Hi, Dan. a thing called anxiety. And we've got names for it, but it's really hard to actually define and describe what it is. And so this idea of attention, or a type of psychological pain or mental suffering, is about as good as we can get. And I think that, good metaphors often do really well, because we think about objects, usually in mechanics, that are under stress, things like a fan belt that's constantly under stress or tension. And if it's under tension and it gets pulled in the wrong direction, that's when it starts to stress. When we take a bar of metal and we start to bend that bar of metal, where we're bending it, that causes stress. You'll hear about stress fractures that you get in your bones, and you can also get stress fractures in glass. So when something that's rigid gets bent in the direction that it doesn't want to go, it causes this thing that we call stress. And those are really good metaphors for what it feels like in our bodies. And so that's, it's, for some people, it's a big insight to go, oh my gosh, emotion occurs in my body. Yeah, emotion occurs in your body. Stress occurs in your body. We call it psychological, which sort of has this implication that it's taking place in your brain. But we do not, and sometimes I'll say to clients, where do you feel that? And they'll say, in my head. And it's like, no, actually, no, you don't feel emotions in your head. Emotions are felt right throughout your body. And that's where we hold our stress. So on that basis of that, thinking about the kinds of things that can cause you to feel a tension inside you, what sorts of things tend to cause you that feeling of tension? What sorts of things tend to cause you stress? Get into the chat box, because my webinars are always so much better when everybody participates. So don't think too much about this stuff. It is being recorded, but don't you worry, the people who are watching the recording won't be able to see the chat. They'll only be able to hear me. And I will read out some of the things from the chat, but I won't identify who's writing them. So media reports on property prices going up. So that suggests that you're trying to get into the property market, because as a property owner, when I started young, when I see property prices going up, I actually get a reduction in stress. Bills, when the bill comes in and says, right, this is how much you need to pay, and you think, hang on a second, I don't know that I really budgeted for that. That wasn't really part of my plan. I didn't think it was going to cost that much. I find cars in particular are big bills. I know that a lot of people have found electricity bills to become much bigger bills. When you have too many things to think about and do at one time. When you've got like heaps of stuff on your plate. I often sort of like to take things on myself and go, okay, I could do that. And then every now and again, like there'll be the perfect storm, and I have this sense of, okay, I've got just about enough on my plate as I can handle, and there's that feeling of one more thing will break me. I've got so many balls in the air. If something goes wrong, I'm not going to cope, and that's really stressful. Money worries, workload, work deadlines. Something's coming up, and there's a pressure that builds up internally to get it done. Unfinished tasks, exams. If you don't finish something, procrastination really feeds into this, and there's this really interesting dynamic between stress and these kind of anxious feelings and the avoidance that drives motivation. So there's this kind of bizarre paradox where the more stressed I am, the more avoidant I become, which means the more I procrastinate, which means I stress more because the things that I need to do don't get done. Exams. Exams are really stressful. Big moments in life upon which a lot of things ride. Annoying people. Yeah, people are annoying almost by definition. Who was it? John Paul Sartre, who said, "Hell is other people." Traffic. Yeah, I have actually, to a great extent, like set up my entire life and lifestyle pretty much to avoid traffic, because when I'm sitting in traffic with carbon monoxide puffing out the back of the vehicle that I'm sitting in, I get really, really stressed, and it's almost like I feel this road rage creep up, and it's like nothing to do with the other drivers, though I'd like to blame them. It's just sitting there wasting my life. Clients lacking awareness of their limitations, expecting you to be able to perform miracles for them. So, good summary, guys, and this is sort of the really brief nutshell, and I'm going to sort of spell out 2 causes of stress to really simplify it. Number 1, the ones we've just talked about for the most part: life events and responsibilities. And if life events and responsibilities would be probably okay on their own if I had unlimited resources, if I had all the time, if I had all the money, if I had all the help in the world, I'd just deal with it. But I don't. Yeah, there's only one of me, and often there's a lot of things that I need to do, and I start to become insufficient to be able to meet that purpose. So that combination of life that happens, the responsibilities that I either have because they're handed to me or I reach out and take, and then the fact that I have limited resources available to meet them. So you can see that tension there, that pulling of a string in 2 directions. Yeah, there's things in my life that I want to do, plus life just happens. COVID just happens. Business changes just happen. Clients just happen. And then there's just not enough of me to go around and do everything that I want to do, or not to do, to be able to do everything that other people want me to do. So life events plus responsibilities and limited resources, big cause of stress one. In the workplace, this is all from official government documents that look at stress in the workplace. This is the stuff that we know causes stress: long hours, and you might be able to, and actually, if there's any of these that are relevant to you, just jot that in the chat. Long hours, heavy workload, organisational changes, and I know that you're a fast-growing company, and there's likely to be a lot of organisational changes. Plus, you're constantly working as consultants inside other organisations, and by definition, you're working in those organisations as they go through organisational changes. So very often, you're not just dealing with your own organisation's politics and changes, you're working and dealing with other organisations' politics and changes. Tight deadlines cause stress when things absolutely have to be done by a particular time. When there's a change to your duties, if someone else goes on leave, or if you're asked to step up, or someone just resigns and suddenly there's spaces that need to be filled. Feeling of job insecurity, which a lot of people felt during COVID. Suddenly it was like, okay, do I have a job? And if I do have a job, how many hours am I going to get? And then what's going to happen after the lockdowns all lifted? So there's been a lot of job insecurity over the last 12 to 15 months. A lack of autonomy. Don't know if lack of autonomy is something that's an issue for you guys, but certainly that comment about clients expecting too much, being unaware of their limitations. Your clients can constrain what you would like to do. You might have an idea of what the best solution is, but you might be sort of disrupted in your attempts to sort of put that into practice. Repetitive work creates stress. I'm not sure that's going to be an issue for most of the people in your teams, but anytime you go, particularly if you're going from engaging human contact kind of work, or doing work that's intellectually stimulating, and then there's a part of the role that's repetitive. I was talking to a lawyer who handles big cases, and there's some really good conceptual stuff, but then there's a lot of stuff that's just grind, reviewing 3,000 documents, and it's really painful. I'm a teacher in tertiary institutions. I love teaching. I love preparing presentations. I love helping people to become good at what they want to do. But then when the assignments come in, and I just have to sit down and mark the assignments based upon a specific criteria that was written by someone else, I swear that I nearly die. And do I find 100 other things that need to be done other than that marking, which of course has a deadline. And the closer the deadline looms, the more stressed I become, and the more frustrating the work becomes. Someone's asked, can you expand on what makes repetitive work cause stress, or is that just dependent on personality type? It's at a human needs level. It's about we need variety, but we also need consistency. And the repetitive work, it's the lack of variety. It's the lack of stimulation, the intellectual stimulation, lack of meaning and purpose. Often when we're doing repetitive tasks that are below, particularly if we feel like they're below our skill level and knowledge level, then we sort of actually experience kind of an existential crisis of meaninglessness, which is extremely anxiety inducing. All right, other common causes: insufficient job skills, inadequate resources, lack of equipment, lack of promotional opportunities, harassment in the workplace. This is a big thing that's come up recently politically and through the media, discrimination. I've noticed that a lot of women in particular who've sort of been doing really well in the workplace, when this kind of issue around harassment has just sort of exploded for a lot of people, their kind of past experiences have come back. That's kind of been triggered and they've been reminded of them, and that's kind of been kind of re-traumatizing and stressful. But also, it makes them very angry. But also this question of, do I do anything about it? Is it too far in the past? So these issues of harassment don't just occur in the here and now; they're also historical. Tensions in work relationships can cause a lot of stress, and of course, when there's crises, usually if someone gets hurt, if there's a threat of some kind to the workplace, anything that you would expect to be kind of traumatic in nature. So that's that first category. I'm sort of rushing now because we're at 20 past 12, and I want to get on to talking to you about what the antidotes are. But it's really good to have this foundation. Okay, these things are stressful because the first antidote, I'll deal with this now. The first antidote is to just address those issues. It's like health and safety. People used to just get hurt at work. People used to just get injured, and it was like, oh yeah, that's we'll just put that down. It's just a numbers game. And then health and safety became really big, and it was like, okay, well actually we can do reviews, we can do risk assessments, we can risk assess absolutely every little thing. We can appoint people to be health and safety officers, and suddenly the risks and the number of incidents and the number of injuries went down like globally, like really dramatically. And this was easily to account in big organizations and small as well. Similar with causes of stress. You could almost do like a risk assessment around, okay, well, what's causing me stress? What's causing me stress? What's causing me stress? Okay, well, how do I minimize the risk of the stress that's causing? So that's at the practical level. The second big cause of stress is not the things themselves that are happening, but our thoughts and fears about the future. Yeah, our thoughts and fears and worries about future events that will happen, future traffic experiences, future annoying clients, future frustrations in the workplace, future deadlines. And our inability, or our fear about our inability to meet those responsibilities, and our ongoing fear that we will have limited resources, there will not be enough of us to do it. Another one of the webinars that I do on a fairly regular basis is, it's this kind of this deep sense that a lot of people have of I am not enough. And that's not about reality. That's about a fear of a future reality. So those are the two things that are actually happening, and the fear of future possibility. What does this do? I think we've talked enough about this, but muscular tension, ongoing discomfort, which slowly leads to actual disease. You have impaired cognitive ability. So stress is good in short bursts. So like the stress about real life situations that go, right, I've got to deal with this. When I finally get to the point where I've got to do that marking, I'll go, right, I've got to do the marking, I'll stay up late and I'll just blast through it. And so I can really help me focus. But if that's ongoing, then eventually that will impair my long-term enjoyment of life. I'll end up with cardiopulmonary conditions, heart disease. It's a lowered immune system. There's this susceptibility to things like diabetes and cancer that increases with ongoing stress. So there are real health conditions. Why do I talk about that? Because it's that kind of future long-term problem that tends to be most motivating for people to make the changes and implement the kinds of things that I'm about to talk about. Okay, managing stress. What do we do? Okay, look to the future. Yeah, look to the future. And I know that a whole bunch of you are going, look to the future? Who's got time for that? But that's the best antidote. If you can, actually spend time planning, and if as a manager you can spend time with your staff planning, and if as a team member you can spend time saying, well, what's on the horizon? What's coming up? What kind of events? And when I say life, I'm talking about your personal life, but also the corporate life. What can you anticipate? One of my favorite textbooks in psychotherapy is titled Predictable Difficulties. And what it essentially means is that a lot of the stuff that people struggle with psychologically is, when you step back and have a look at the bigger picture, predictable. Yeah, you can say, well, that was, of course that was going to happen. Of course I was going to get stressed, because of course I was going to get overwhelmed, because there was too much coming up. I could see that perfect storm, that collision of events. If I just look, I'm doing that action like one of those meerkats. Look up and look around and see what's coming. Manage your responsibilities. A lot of the work that I do really with clients is go, well, what are you responsible for at the moment? Well, I've got a family, I've got a team, I'm a senior manager, I've got a partner, I've got a parent who's aging and ill. I've got to deal with all of the home, the aged care facilities, all these things. I go, well, what? I also work with a charity. I'm on 3 boards, whatever it is. Okay, well, do you really need to have all of those responsibilities? I have a colleague who sits on a committee that I sit on, and she'd really been getting noticeably stressed. And then one day she came to one of our meetings, and she's really a valuable member, and she said, I'm resigning. And we were like, oh no, that's terrible. We're going to miss you. How are you feeling? And she's like, I feel amazing. She goes, I cannot tell you the weight that is off my shoulders. Remove some of those responsibilities. You don't need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. And in fact, other people would really value that opportunity to have the responsibility that you've been carrying. Think about your available resources. What might you do now? And often decisions aren't about big things. Sometimes they are, but often it's just about little decisions. How do you manage your available resources? And I'm going to go on to talk about, I think it's on the next slide, how to manage available resources. This is how you manage available resources, because this is your core resource. Your key resources is you. Take care of your body. People go, oh yeah, that's obvious. No, it's not. Physical activity is the number one mental health prevention strategy out there. If there's a quote from a leading psychiatrist that said, if you could create a pill that does what exercise does for mental health, then you would wipe most other products out of the market. So eat well, yeah, exercise, sleep, seek out and build good human connection relationships with family, relationships with friends, relationships with your partner. Take care of your body will take care of your mind, then your mind is better at taking care of your body, so on and so forth. There's a bit of a promo in the background for the Uprise modules. And I hope you're all thinking about, okay, which of these do you need to implement? We have modules that very much focus on sleep. We have webinars as well that we can present on sleep and relaxation. So check those out through the Uprise app. You've all got access to it either through literally an app on your phone or through a website that mirrors those apps. And it takes you through step by step, scientifically validated methods to get better sleep and do a range of the things that I'm talking about today. All right. So step 1, manage your life. Step 2, manage your physical health. Step 3, build your mental resilience. How do you build your mental resilience? Well, step 1, step 2, that's how you build your mental resilience, especially in step 2. Physical health is a huge part of it. But then we've also got a range of modules that will talk you through this. But listening to me now for the next, how many minutes have I got? 4 minutes will help. Okay, so the first skill that we suggest around building resilience is to uncover your personal values. Figure out, and I actually did a webinar on this yesterday for managers. Figure out what your personal values are. What's important to you in life? What's important to you about what you do? What do you value about who you are and how you are in the world? Figure out what activities make you feel good, and do those activities. Do more of them. There's a lovely saying in it's called solution focused therapy. That says do more of what works and less of what doesn't. So figure out what your values are, what you like doing, and do more of that. And I imagine some of you are sitting there going, "Oh yeah, I remember I used to love doing that kind of thing. I just haven't had time for that recently. I really miss it." That's the thing. Go back to it. And it applies in your personal life, but also in the workplace. How do you work with your managers to do more of what aligns with who you are and what you value? Number 2, practice mindfulness. Learn mindfulness, practice mindfulness. So this is an ancient technique, at least 2,500 years old, taught by the Buddha, practiced by the Buddha, and trained countless millions of people since then. Psychology has picked it up in the last 30 years or so, because after lots of research, it's like, oh wow, this stuff really works. We can see actual benefits. We can measure those benefits. Mindfulness doesn't have to be sort of, sitting and practicing meditation like in the picture. It's just about being aware of the present moment, learning how to stay in the present moment, and learning how to identify thoughts. Now, identifying thoughts becomes really important, because that's the next step in building mental resilience. Learning how to identify unhelpful thoughts. So this is a whole strategy, and you can do these through the modules in the Uprise app. But you learn to identify your unhelpful thoughts. The foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the main kind of psychological treatment method for psychological sort of distress, has this foundational theory that you have beliefs about the world that you learned throughout your life. Those beliefs translate into what they call automatic thoughts. You have automatic thoughts, and then those automatic thoughts then lead to your emotional state. And so there's this lovely idea that it's not life that's stressful. It's your thoughts about life that's stressful. It's your response, your cognitive response to what's going on around you that leads to your distress. If you were actually just engaging with the facts of life themselves, you would be far less stressed than you actually are. All right, so time-wise, we're out of time. If there's any comments, I'll sort of rush through this, because I think it's good just to hear about. In order to identify thoughts, first of all, learn about mindfulness, and then you follow the feeling. Because when you become mindful, you become aware of when that stress starts to come in. And you ask yourself, what did I think just before I had that feeling? And once you do that, you write it down. Yeah, and often we don't write it down. We don't want to write it down because it feels embarrassing. I'll lose someone important to me. I'll run out of money. I'll go broke. I'll lose it all. I'll lose my job. I'll fail my education. I'll end up homeless. Everyone will reject or abandon me. I'll end up permanently depressed or hopeless. It'll prove that I'm a failure. But write those thoughts down. Then the next step in the cognitive behavioral process, they call it retraining thinking or cognitive restructuring. Ask yourself, okay, if that's the thoughts that I'm thinking, what's the cost of thinking that thought? Well, the first one is I feel bad. I feel stressed. I feel overwhelmed. I feel depressed. I feel anxious. I might feel resentful. I might start blaming other people. I probably procrastinate. I act in ways that I don't want to. I become grumpy and defensive with others. It affects my relationships. So what are the costs and consequences of thinking the thought that you're thinking? There's a range of ways of then challenging those thoughts. One of which is to specify reasons why your mind's worst case prediction isn't likely to happen, and to think of exceptions when think about times where you did expect the worst, where you did have that thought and it didn't happen. So first of all, identify the thought. get it on paper, and then start to challenge it. There's a method they call the Socratic method, which is the most common method in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, of challenging thoughts. Then, and I wanted to get to this bit, because what we know, or what we believe about thinking, is that there's this really interesting acceptance that across the literature and the field, that you can't stop a thought. Yeah, there's this lovely idea that through things something like mindfulness or meditation, you'll be able to stop the thought. But we generally accept that you can't stop the thought. There's another approach called acceptance and commitment therapy that says, okay, you can't stop the thought, but just accept it, let it go. Don't get caught up in a tussle. Thanks to those that need to run. I appreciate I've gone a little bit over. This is my last slide. But what you need to do is you need to replace the thought. So once you've identified an unhelpful thought, you need to replace it with a more true and more helpful thought. It has to be true, because otherwise your mind won't accept it. And I usually ask clients a simple question, which is, what is it that you are really wanting in this situation? And if you can say to yourself as a replacement thought, I want to succeed. I want to get this done. I want to find more meaningful things to do at work. I want to make my partner happy. I want to make my family secure. I want to have a secure job. That can lead to a more productive thinking. So some examples here. Sometimes I procrastinate, but I work hard and get the job done. There's a lot to do, but I can only do one thing at a time. I've done it before, I can do it again. I am enough, I am okay. I always do my best. I'm doing the best I can with the resources that I have at my disposal. I can do this if I set my mind to it. Yes, this is a setback, but I know I can keep on going. I am a good person. I am a good worker. I am a diligent employee. I'm valued by my team. And then asking yourself, who might be able to help me with this? Because a problem shared is a problem halved. Talking to other people about what it is that you're worrying about can help you, sort of displace the troublesome thoughts, but also often you get buy-in and you get people saying, oh, well, I can help you with that, or I like doing those tasks. I can do that quite easily. All right, so we best leave it there. Obviously, it was a little bit ambitious in what I wanted to cover today, so I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've taken something from it. These are the key takeaways. Life's stressful. That's okay. Minimize the stresses where you can. Don't take on too much at once. Build resilience through nutrition, exercise, sleep, connection, mindfulness. Thoughts can create more stress than is necessary, and thoughts can also be retrained to relieve rather than create stress. So if you could just share your final comments, some of the takeaways that you've had from today's webinar, that would be great. Thanks, Jono.
Thanks very much, Nigel. Just a quick word to wrap up. Hopefully we can get a copy of the slides out to everybody. I encourage everybody to get on the Uprise app, try some of the modules, go through the slides, have a chat to people. As Nigel said, that can be one of the best things you can possibly do. And attend the webinars. They occur weekly, and I'll send out the invites as they come in. So other than that, thanks very much for your time, and have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And thanks, Nigel, for hosting us today. It was fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nigel. Thanks, Jono.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Thanks, Jono.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Hi, thank you.